Welcome to Deal Nation. On the show today, we're joined by Matt Porcaro, the founder of the 203k Way community. Great to have you on the show, Matt.
Great to be here, Michael. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, I was just saying pre-show, I love that sign in the background. You got the 203k Way branded back there. That was a gift for you, yeah?
Yeah. My wife got it for me a couple of years back. She felt like I had to spruce my office up a little bit, and it's a big passion of mine, obviously, which we'll talk more about. But yeah, I always have it plastered behind me, and I point to it all the time, just reminding everybody and why I do this and why. The 203k way, which we'll talk about, is really the way I got into real estate investing, which for me was a long, hard experience, but I figured it out eventually with this process. So
Perfect. And it's well positioned. Your head doesn't get in the way of that for anybody watching this on YouTube.
Yeah, there's a lot of maneuvers that have to happen to make it work that way. So
yeah. Unlike me, who this always says either deal nah or deal nat, depending on where I'm sitting because of my big head. So,
Yeah.
Everybody here, everybody listening in has a kind of a unique story about how they gravitated towards real estate investment. Now, I think there are common denominators in that everybody wants to get their time back and everybody wants to find a way to generate wealth that isn't hour by hour time leveraged. But outside of that, the time in their life that they gravitated towards this, the exact reasons they gravitated towards this always differs. So we'd love to hear your story. Like, what got you initially interested in real estate as a vehicle?
Yeah, it's a great point. And like you said, everyone has similar stories, but different stories. But I think it's important to share them because we all kind of come from some deep rooted reason why we decide that we want to go this route. I always say people don't just like fall into real estate by accident. You have to really understand the drivers under why you want to do it. And for me, it's funny you say like trade time for money, right? Growing up, my parents wanted to trade time for money. They actually had their own business. My dad had his own general contracting business, and it was really hard. He had his own business, but very, very cyclical, very dependent on market conditions. And love my dad, hard worker, great carpenter, great technician. But if anyone's ever read the book of the E-Myth is kind of the whole point of it is like, if you're good at something, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good business owner at something. And not to say my parents aren't good business owners, they've been in business 40 years and still surviving, but they really struggle to get it off the ground, as many small businesses do. So growing up, I knew when times were good, which sometimes they were good, but I really knew when times were bad. They really didn't hide it, or if they tried to hide it, they did a very bad job at it. So when I was really young, I mean, you're talking 5, 6, 7 years old, I just saw how money really was like the driver of the happiness or the stress in my house. And whether we like it or not, that's just what I grew up in. Again, love my parents, but I saw from a young age the importance of money. But what they always told me was, well, you need to go, like, you don't want your own business. This is horrible. You want to go out and just work for a company and get a good job and have your expense, get good, a paycheck every week and get good benefits. And like, that's the dream. So I did that, and I grew up in that environment and what school tells you to do: go to school, go to college, get a good job. And I did that, but suffice to say, I wasn't really that smart. So like, I kind of just was like finding my way through high school and college, and really just went to college for engineering, which sounds like I'm smarter than I am. I can assure you I'm not. But my guidance counselor in high school, I just asked her, what job can I make the most money in the shortest amount of time? And she said, engineering pays really well. So I went into engineering. So like, again, from a young age, I was just like driven to make money, and do that way. So I went into it. Suffice to say, engineering is very, very hard. And I struggled through 4 years, got out by the skin of my teeth, and immediately went right into the workforce. And I found, I found a job somehow. There's one thing about me, I kind of always get by at the seat of my pants. Like I have a pig-headed determination, so it takes me a long time to figure things out. It's never pretty, but I do somehow get things done. So I got out with a very bad GPA, somehow landed a job at a place and started making some money. And this was it. Like I made it, right? This, my parents were
Yeah.
proud. Everyone around me is like, hey, you got a good engineering job out of school. And it's a great thing. And I was probably there about a week or two until I realized, wait, this isn't how people get rich either. Like, this isn't the way, because I got grown up where like you work hard and the harder you work, the more you make and the better you do. But there it was kind of like, if you work really hard in that environment, everyone's like, slow down, man. What are you trying to prove? It's like, it was kind of like a union kind of mentality job there. And I realized that no matter how hard I work, the guy next to me is still making the same amount of money. So it was a really big pivotal moment for me. And that's when I started kind of looking and getting curious, like, well, what makes people rich, right? Like, how do rich people get rich? Because I don't think it's this either, right? At the end of the day, I ended up doing a ton of research, found multiple books. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, of course, is a big driver for many of us, but read
Yeah.
that book and learned about real estate, learned about assets, and really like a book like that, or even just learning about investing in general. The word investing never came up in my house. Like, I don't even think my dad mentioned the word investing, or my mom. Like, it never came up. Stocks, bond. I mean, they didn't have so much as a 401k account, right? They had their own business. They didn't have anything. So when I learned about investing and realized that you use your money to make money, then it all kind of started to make sense. The problem was I had no idea how to do it. So tried a bunch of different strategies, tried and failed many times, but knew in the back of my head that real estate was the kingpin. Robert Kiyosaki talks about it in the book. Like, it is the main driver.
Yeah.
Growing up in here in New York, where everything's extremely expensive, when he talks about buying multiple houses, I was like, dude, this guy's crazy. He doesn't live in New York. Like, yeah, it's easy for him to say buy a bunch of houses. I'm in New York. I'm lucky if I buy one. So that's I had it in the back of my head, but that's really what started the process for me on realizing, like, I do want to buy real estate, but I just had to figure out how I was going to do it.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit because, you brought up a couple of really good points about money, right? And I think first of all, I think we can all agree as entrepreneurs that the idea that money doesn't buy you some level of happiness is bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And there's been studies that show this of there are diminishing returns at a certain point. It depends on where
Yeah.
you live. If you're in New York or you're in Ohio or whatever. But let's just use as a base number like $100,000 a year, right?
Sure.
$100,000 a year that pays your mortgage. It puts food in the fridge. It covers sports expenses for your kids.
Yep.
It pays for a vacation. You have all of your needs and all of your basic wants. You feel really good, right?
Yeah.
In
Of
any
course.
amount of money after that, it starts to be diminishing returns. You don't
Agree.
necessarily have to be a multimillionaire to be quote unquote rich. Right. The difference is, and this is where I think all entrepreneurs feel this, is you're talking about that 9 to 5 job, right? And some people go into that 9 to 5 job and they're like, I have the benefits, I have the salary, it's giving me that $100,000 baseline. I'm protected. I'm
Yeah.
taken care of. Whereas others with like very much side eye are looking at the employer going, yeah, but you could take this from me at any point. I have
Yeah.
no control over this. I don't trust it. I want control over this. And the people that want control over this always gravitate towards some form of entrepreneurship. And
Correct.
then in the
Yep.
case of our conversation, real
You're
estate.
talking you're basically explaining me. I'm that second guy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, I
sometimes it's like
mean,
taking the red pill or the blue pill, man. Like, I think of The Matrix all the time, one of my favorite movies of all time. And it's like, what if I just took the blue pill? Right.
yeah.
It's like one of those, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I always try to remember to tell people, like, listen, this, you don't have to do, like, nobody's forcing you to do it. It's just what made the most sense for me. Right. As I grew up, like, sometimes I do wish that I was that person that was okay with just like that was okay for me. And I wouldn't get antsy. But the reality is like I told you, I was in that for 2 weeks before I started looking for options out. I just
Yeah.
got antsy really quick. I just realized that wasn't going to go with who I am as a person. It's nothing wrong with it. I'm just built differently than some people. And oftentimes I'm very envious of people that, are able to just kind of like fill a need with a job and trade their time for money and be happy with it. And I tried it for 15 years, man. I was in the corporate world. Like, to be fair, I didn't escape it immediately. My job is actually what helped me escape it. I'm very grateful that I had that W-2 as long as I had, because I really think that was truly one of my biggest assets for getting started. I think without it,
Mhm.
it would have been even harder, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and a lot of the top coaches I know will advise the same thing. Like, don't leave your W two too early because you really can leverage that in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like even if you're not full time, but you're still on a W two, is
Yeah.
for a lot of lending, for a lot of just financial background and security kind of purposes, having that W two is a golden key in a
100%.
lot of ways until you're really ready to not, But going back to that kind of conversation about wealth building in real estate, right? Like you and I are part of big mastermind groups, and
Yeah.
so we have the exposure to the top 1%. That the hustlers that are making eight figures, if not more, in some cases. They've usually got like five businesses. They've got their core real estate business, and they're doing
Yep.
some coaching, and they've got a mini media empire, and they wrote a book, and they're always hustling, always looking for new entrepreneurial
Yeah.
angles.
Yep.
But one of the things that we try to stress on this show, especially for the listeners who are really kind of just starting out and getting their feet wet and trying to get some cash flow in, you don't have to aim that big, right? Like you don't have to do that. Like there's a version of real estate entrepreneurship that is the unsexy term would be like the middle management, the equivalent of middle management in your 9 to 5 gig, where you can just float on that
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
But the sexier term for it is it's a lifestyle business, right?
Yes.
You don't need to be a multimillionaire. You can build a lifestyle business that allows you to hang out with your kids on a Wednesday morning for as long as you want, and you're still making more than you would have made at that W-2, you know?
Nailed it. Nailed it. Um, I finally left the corporate world. I tried to exit probably around 2019. Um, and I was out for about a year, and I crawled back in when we were about to have a kid, because the reality was the health insurance was big. And I got an
Mhm.
offer I couldn't refuse from a very big, very prestigious company. That was a very, very much a consulting role that did give me a lot of time. And it was the only reason I took it was because I was able to do that while still run my real estate business at that time, my flipping business. So,
Yeah.
um, but when I most recently ended it, I could have continued in that role. I could have, but the reality was the flexibility started to go away that I originally had with the role. And even though it was still very simple and very easy, the biggest thing is I have two young kids now. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and this has all happened obviously in the last 5 years. And that right there, what you just said about the lifestyle and the business, like the fact that I had breakfast with my kids this morning, the fact that I'm going to be able to be my son's T-ball coach because I don't have, like, I'm not stuck on a train or stuck in New York City at work or something like that. And I make my own time schedule, which is very difficult too. Time freedom comes with a lot of challenges as well. And this is just, again, a whole nother topic probably for another day. But at the end of the day, what it did for me more than anything was reclaim my autonomy of my time, which is ultimately what I care more about. And to be fair to your point, like you know, my businesses do well. Could they do entirely better? Yeah, they could always grow and do better. But where we're at is a very comfortable place in the sense that we have what we need, and anything above that is bonus, but we have what we need. And from day to day right now, I'm just happy with what we do, growing at a pace that allows me to still spend time with my kids, but also do something which I really enjoy, which is work in the real estate world, help a lot of people, help families, and kind of see how real estate could change their lives as well.
Yeah, and what's really and we're gonna this will be a bridge kind of into the 203k way, because I do want
Yeah.
to get like basically like an elevator pitch of what that is for people
Yeah.
that aren't familiar. But in that, to kind of wrap up the 9 to 5 W-2 to entrepreneurship part of the discussion, an important thing that I think is important to keep in mind is that with that 9 to 5, that W-2, like I said, like unless you're just really ingrained in the company, there's always that, at least for the entrepreneurs, like I said, that kind of like side eye fear that like somebody else is actually in the driver's seat and could take
Oh
that
yeah.
away. And with real estate, the markets pivot and change. You'll have to kind of adjust a little bit here and there with the ebbs and flows of the business or of real estate and the real estate market in general.
Yeah.
But there are little adjustments, and people are always able to find if profits are starting to ebb in one direction, they're always able to find a new direction to get profits back up to where they need to be or higher. And
Oh yeah.
so you're always in complete control. And so knowing things, in having things like the 203k way in your back pocket, even if you're not going to do it right now, as a future pivot, is hugely valuable.
It's a great point, right? And that's the other thing too, is real estate is such a playground. It could be it could be really daunting at times, but to your point, it's like when you have the ability to get into something where there's a lot of different ways to make money and you haven't and you slowly but surely build your skill set in that world, you start to get into areas and profit centers that you never thought you would. When I came in, like very recently for me, I've gone more on the lending side. I've gotten my loan origination license as of like a couple weeks ago, literally. Like, but this was all something that just kind of grew. If you asked me 5 years ago as an engineer if I was going to get into the lending business, I would have never believed you. I would be like, I have zero interest. But as opportunities start to arise and you start to kind of see the needs and the fulfillment and like what you can do in certain branches, I mean, you do that like construction business, we do stuff with that, property management, like lead generation, we started getting into. There's so many different ways of making money in this world, which again, as an entrepreneur type and everything, it's sometimes a blessing and a curse. But the reality is, to your point, is you're not, I forget which really, which financial guru said it, but basically saying like the average millionaire has 7 income streams, right? And it's basically kind of the idea of like, to your point, like who knows, we saw it during the pandemic. I mean, luckily for me, I got to keep my job, but a lot of people didn't overnight. They could be really good at what they did, but for whatever reason, they were in an industry that just got killed literally in an instant for no fault of their own. And now all of the sudden you're dependent on a single income and that income stops. Now you have no options. If the lending business stopped tomorrow, I'd have other business. I'd have my flipping business. I'd have my construction business. I'd have my properties that I rent, right? If my wife stopped working her job, which she enjoys to do, she does it, part-time. If that stopped, we'd have other income coming in, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the thing of like, when you get into this, it doesn't stop, to your point, like it doesn't stop at just like the idea of passive income is great. And we all think about it. But as you said, we're in a lot of these masterminds, myself included, as one of these people of like, when you're in this game, you're going to have a lot of different ways to make money in it. And most people that are in this game and doing it in a big way have multiple profit centers. Yeah, they get passive income from some things, but at the end of the day, active income is a big part of this. I think that's one thing, especially people just starting out, and even myself included, probably underestimated this. Everyone getting into real estate investing wants to do it because of time freedom and they want passive income, which, as experienced real estate investors, we always kind of laugh at the passive income thing when you've actually been a part of it. It's passive in the sense like, yeah, your rent is going to show up in the beginning of the month on your bank account, but there's a lot that goes into getting you there. There's that end of it, but then there's also the active income part, which we talked about, is like that passive income is great, but that's not going to change your life in a sense of like, you're not just going to buy a couple rental properties and go live on the beach and sip Mai Tais. Like, you still need some other active income businesses. But the beauty of this game is that you can find businesses now. Like I always said that I was living a double life during my time in my engineering world, because I was doing engineering and like electrical work, and then I was coming home and doing real estate. And it was like, it felt like I was living a double life in terms of my career. Now everything feeds each other. My lending business feeds the 203k way business, which feeds my flipping business, which feeds the partnerships and the lead generation stuff. And it's like all this stuff is all intertwined. So now it's just all a lot more cohesive, and you can find ways to make money in every every environment.
Yeah, and you have to spend time as an entrepreneur. You do have to be active at some level. You
Yes.
don't have to be 40, 50 hours a week active.
No.
And you have the ability in most cases to set your own schedule. You
Yes.
know, if you don't want to work on a Thursday because you have plans with your wife and your kids, you can do that. And there's that you when you don't have to, even if it's for even in like a part-time kind of W-2 gig, if you have to be in the seat from 8 a.m. until 4 in the afternoon or whatever every day, then that part of your day belongs to someone else, right? Whereas
Yep.
when you're an entrepreneur, it belongs to you, and you have the ability to, even if you're going to end up working five hours during the day, you're going to do it on your own time outside of maybe some scheduled like sales calls, right? Like you're gonna
100%.
you're gonna be able to pick and choose your path.
Exactly. Exactly.
So let's talk about the 203k way specifically. Like what
Sure.
what is the 203k opportunity? How'd you find it? Let's get into that.
Yeah. So the 203k way, as I stated, is my like community. It's like my brand, I guess you can call it, which is essentially just helping people take advantage of this product called the 203k, this loan product called the 203k, which we'll talk about, and how this was basically like real estate's best kept secret. That was finally the catalyst that allowed me to get into real estate. Like, as I shared before, I wanted to get into real estate investing. I obviously was reading about how important it was and how, how many millionaires it creates and all this stuff. But living in New York, I just felt like it was impossible because, when I started digging more into it, they're like, well, you need 20% down or 25% down, and you need experience, and you need $500,000 from people that are going to lend it to you. And I actually did try that. And as it turns out, when you go and you ask someone that has a lot of money if they could give you money so you can go flip a house, usually their first question is, how many times have you done this? And in my case, it was always zero. So usually that conversation ends pretty quickly in my case. So again, I tried a bunch of different things, right, wrong, or indifferent. I got into wholesaling, tried doing that, trying to find ways that I can again break into the real estate investing world without really much money or much time either too. I was still working my W-2. And to be fair, like I said, it takes me a long time to figure things out. I just wasn't good at it. I don't know, didn't have the right people behind me, didn't really understand it that well. And I tried a lot, and I just kept failing at everything I was really trying at with real estate. It was probably a better part of 4 years that I was toying with the idea of how I was going to do this, whether it be wholesaling or trying to, I had the general contracting background. So trying to look for people to partner with on deals and stuff like that. Nothing ever worked for me. It wasn't until I found one thing I was active in real estate groups and communities and stuff like that. So there's our local real estate investment group. And, I was going to that, and the lady that leads it, this lady, Melissa, who still leads it to this day, was, I was talking to her about it. And I was like, listen, I don't have much money. You talk to these people, to do passive investments in the Midwest where they could buy up a bunch of $200,000 properties. Like, I don't have that money. I'm not sitting on a big 401k. I got maybe 10, 15 grand to my name and a big desire to do this. So if you were me, you could go back in time. She was someone I respected a lot. I had, a lot of properties, family, family woman, just, it was just like one of these people, like if she knows, like, hopefully she could tell me something. Right. So it's like, if you can go back in time and do this all over again, or like you were in my position, what would you do? And again, I've been researching real estate for 4 years. And the first time I ever heard about the 203k, even after 4 years of research and videos and being in communities and stuff, this was the first time I ever heard about the 203k. She said I would do something called the FHA 203k loan, and I would use it to buy a house. That you will turn basically into a rental and build some equity on and go and repeat the process. I'm like, I don't even know what you just said. Can you repeat that? Can you start from the top here? So I said, what's the 203k? And she said, well, basically what it is, if you're familiar with an FHA loan, right? It's a federally backed owner occupant loan product. So it's for people that are buying their primary residence, right? When you buy your primary residence, which I was in a position to do, right? To be clear, I didn't own a house yet. I was living with my parents at the time, renting from them. So the idea was like, if you don't own a house yet, you have the ability to buy a house for only 3.5% down. So I was like, well, great. I could do that. I think I have 3.5%, or I could save that. It seemed more attainable. Went from like having in New York to save 150,000 to having to save 10. It made a lot more sense. Right. I was like, okay, that's good. I was like, well, what's the 203k? She's like, well, the 203k is their renovation loan version. It's the same loan. The only difference with this one is it allows you to wrap in all the costs that you would need to renovate a house. So it allows you to buy properties in any condition. You could buy fixer-uppers, foreclosures, as is properties. You can pretty much buy anything any cash investor could typically buy, or is reserved only for investors. So what you do is you buy a house that really needs some work. You renovate it using the bank's money. All you have to put down is 3.5%. They're going to give you all the money to purchase it, all the money to renovate it. She said, buy it, live in the basement, rent out the upstairs to tenants or a family, live in the basement because it is your primary residence, but live in the smaller part, rent out the rest of the house. We call it house hacking now, is the common term people use. But basically get your mortgage paid for, build a boatload of equity through the renovation using very little of your money. And this is all your property. You own it on a 30-year long-term mortgage at a low FHA interest rate. Take that money that you build in the equity, leverage it, and go do it again and go buy more. She blew my mind with that because this was the first time I ever heard this. And this was something where I finally was like, well, this is something I could do. So I went home and I started researching it and started learning, trying to learn about the 203k and get more information on it. And as it happens to be, there was no information on it. Like there was just nothing. I was basically coming up short. And I'm like, why does nobody really talk about this? Fast forward, I did figure it out. We could talk more about the deal in a second, but there's a lot of reasons why it's not talked about. Again, that's another thing we can talk about. But at the end of the day, what I realized was that when you use something like this product that's available that not many people talk about, but it is a great way to use leverage. When you use something like this through the eyes of an investor, which is what I do, you can make your primary residence or your friend or your family member's primary residence using these types of programs. It's a great way to leverage your money if you have very little to play with into a big return on equity and income, and use it as a springboard to go buy more real estate, which is eventually what I did.
So we're talking about doing like a cash out refinance, right? Where you're taking money based on.
I mean, you could. Yeah. I mean, what I did in my scenario was I finished it up. I made a big mistake. I moved out before I went to go refinance it, or to go do a HELOC. So remember, the key point of what this is and what we talk about is owner occupancy and home ownership is actually, it's one of the strongest tools in your arsenal, right? Because owner occupied loans, primary residence loans, are where banks give you the best terms. They give you the ability to put very little down, in some cases, no money down if you're a VA or something like that, or you do like some first-time home buying programs or whatever. But they give you the ability to not have to come out of pocket really with anything. And they give you the best rates. It's the best rates because the banks know that primary residences of all the places of all residential real estate is the lowest risk for them, because they know that the place you call home is the place you're going to care the most about. And as we learned in 2008, when people went and bought a ton of houses because houses were easy to buy, when they couldn't make the payments on any of them, they sure as heck didn't make the payments on all their extra houses. But what was the house that they continued to make the payments on? Their own, right? So they know that it's lower risk, so they give you the best terms and everything. So the point I'm making here is with the refinance and the next steps, what I did was I moved out and then I went to go try to get a HELOC on it. Bad idea. I should have stayed in it. Luckily, I shopped around to a lot of banks and I did get a HELOC on it for about $80,000. That allowed me to do it as a non-owner occupant as long as I own the property, which I did. And I was able to use that home equity line. Now I went from having only really 10 grand which is all I put down on my first property, to now having 80 to play with and being able to use that plus my experience, which was most important, to go buy more real estate with different methods.
So in terms of the timeline, like, do you have to have a minimum time of of occupancy in the home as primary residence, or so what is that?
Yeah, so FHA states you have to intend for it to be your primary residence for at least a year after the closing date. That's the statute of limitations. That's what they grade you on. In my case, I bought the house. It took me about 8 months to renovate. It was a big renovation. I bought a crack house 2 family. It was literally a crack house. It was the only thing I could afford. Even with all this cool stuff, it was still the only thing I could afford in New York. They were selling drugs out of the front. There was just human feces all over the walls, and it was a disaster. It was like the nastiest house you could possibly buy. But again, looking at it through the eyes of the investor, it was in a decent area, and I knew that I can use the bank's money. Like, it was ugly now, but I could use the bank's money to make it look nice. And I did that, and it took all of 8 months. When I was done, I had just got engaged with my now wife, was kind of getting settled. Before you knew it, another 4 months went by, and I had some buddies renting out the other rooms in there. I rented out the entire downstairs to a family, and then eventually I moved in with my, now wife, or at the time my fiance, moved out completely, rented out the whole thing, and I still have that property. It still makes me $2,000 a month net cash flow, and off of that $10,000 down payment I placed, back when I bought it. Initially I made about $150,000 in equity on the front end. Got about $80,000 in a HELOC, so I was able to tap into about half of it. And now, the equity on that property is closer to somewhere in the neighborhood of like 400,000 or 500,000. So, since I bought it back in 2017. So it's been a little while now, but I've constantly just rolled into the next since then. But that was really the nest egg, and that's what got me going.
So you've kept it as a door, right? It's part of your portfolio. You're still making, semi-passive income off of that. Is there a flip option here? I assume you can flip it after a year. Can you flip it within the year if the renovations are quick?
Yes and no. I would say this isn't a flipping loan, right? It's a 30-year mortgage. It's meant to be held. So just a little bit more about my story. Like, I wanted to flip. I wanted to get into flipping. This was like, late 2010s, where everyone was really into flipping, and flipping seemed to be like the best way to go. And also, my background was in construction, so it felt the best to me to do. I did that deal. I renovated it. I pulled the equity out. I went and bought another house about 6 months later, did a flip, recycled the money, did another flip, recycled the money, went and did another flip. My biggest regret is selling those flips.
Yeah.
And the short answer is yes. Theoretically, you could use this as a flipping loan. I wouldn't recommend it. Also, I'm not going to go down this road. I don't know this. I pay my accountant to know this. There's capital gains stuff. There's if you move too quick and you don't live there long enough, you're subject to more taxes and stuff. At the end of the day, the answer is after that year, whatever you do with it, they really can't do anything with it. But what I will say, just from personal experience, is that I wish I held more. I could have 5 or 6 properties right now, and instead I have 3. And the reason is because I sold the ones that probably I didn't sell. I got addicted to the payday on flips. And what I realized was that those paydays, those $50,000 checks, $100,000 checks, are really nice until you just use it to go buy it again. And to your point of talking about investing, flipping is not investing. It's active income. The second I stop flipping houses is the second I stop making money. Versus the houses that I kept, yes, they take some work and stuff. I luckily, thank God, have really good tenants, and the houses that I did keep are great homes, and I make a heavy amount of money per door on these because I use the BRRRR strategy on them. So they're cash cows. But that being said, if I had a couple more of them, I would be feeling a lot better right now. And I would still always have access to that equity. It's not like that 70,000 that I got immediately that I wouldn't have been able to pull out in some other way, shape, or form. Honestly, tax free, because if I did it with a refinance or home equity line or something like that, I could pull that money out and not get snapped for it, versus when I was flipping, I was.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought that up and kind of redefined active versus passive real estate income, and the fact that flipping is in fact active, right?
Yeah.
Because at launch control, our audience is our user base. A good percentage of them are really just building up cash flow through
Sure.
wholesaling,
Yeah,
either
of course.
wholesaling distressed properties or they're flipping land, right? But
Yep.
in both cases, it's a once that marketing pipeline and the lead gen shuts off, the business shuts off, right?
Yep.
Because you need to have consistent deal flow. It's great for generating cash flow, great,
Yep.
but
Yep.
that cash flow pipeline shuts off if you're not actively pursuing active real estate vehicles, namely wholesaling or fix and flip
Right.
situation, right? So
Exactly.
eventually almost everybody wants to get into portfolio building because the portfolio doesn't shut off, right?
Right.
So
Mhm.
where when in the kind of real estate journey, this sounds like to me, and you tell me what you think, but to me the 203k way sounds like a really good opportunity for people that are really looking to add their first level of stability,
Mhm.
especially if they're doing a lot of their wholesaling in their home market and are very, very familiar with what's available in that
Yeah.
market, of being able to kind of use this as a very safe bridge to get the first door in the door.
Yeah, it's the lowest risk financing you can use out there for the biggest. I mean, I've said this, and I've had anyone yet to challenge me on anything that's better. It is the best form of leverage that exists on the planet. It just is. I can't think of a different loan product that's any better than this. I actually just made a post about it like the other day. Love or hate America. One thing that they seem to get really right here is the housing market, and they understand, and the government. I'm not a fan of the government by any means, but their guidelines on, I think they understand the importance of the American dream in in this country, and trying to get as many homeowners to have a piece of the pie as possible. The tinfoil hat people and conspiracy people are saying that corporations just want us to be all, consumers and rent and everything like that. Maybe we are kind of heading in that direction a little bit, but I do think the US government understands the importance of having good home buying programs and giving everybody a chance at home ownership as best they can, because it is the fabric of the country. And the reality is if, again, if people feel like they have a piece of the pie, that they're going to care more about their community, they're going to invest back into their community, their jobs, their schools, their kids. And so for anyone looking to do this, or it's just, again, it's anyone that not everybody can do it, but everybody can benefit from it. What I mean, not everybody can do it, is like, this is one where you have to make it your primary residence, at least for a short time. And you really have to do that in earnest. The biggest question I get asked all the time, especially by the investor type, is like, do you really have to live there?
Yeah.
The reality is do you own a house yet? If the answer is no, you can buy it, and whatever you do with it, it's your house. It's the one house you have on paper. If you're someone that owns 5 properties, you live on the water in Miami, and you're just trying to you go to the bank, you're like, hey, I want to do an FHA loan and buy a 4-family in the middle of, the city. And you're going to tell them, yeah, I'm moving my wife and my 4 kids in there when we have 4 other houses. It's not going to make sense. So
Yeah.
the biggest takeaway here is, like, this is all it is. All the only requirement is that is your primary residence. Okay. And whatever other properties you have pay for themselves. As long as you do that, why not use this every time? Again, it's the best form of leverage out there. Why put down 20% when you can build the 20% equity into the deal instead, and not have to worry? Like, keep as much money in your pocket as possible, right? I did it. The house I'm sitting in right now, we found off market. So when you talk about, like, people that are wholesalers and stuff like this, I mean, one of the best plays you could ever do is find an off market good deal and purchase it with low risk government financing. you're maximizing your return potential wildly. I mean, we bought this house for 615. They were gonna list it on market for 750. We found it off market. We went direct to seller, got in touch with them. They were about to list it with an agent. We got in front of them. We said, listen, we could purchase the property in as is. We don't need to do anything. We're using something called a renovation loan. Don't worry about cleaning it. Don't worry about fixing anything. That was actually their biggest fear. They lived out of state, the kids. They didn't want to come and clean out the house. The old lady had dementia. She was getting older. They had to come and spend weeks to clean this thing out. Their real estate agents told them, you will get top dollar for it, but in order to do that, you have to clean the place out and you have to stage it. So they were being told, listen, you could list it for 750, but you're going to pay a real estate commission. You have to clean it. You have to do another fix and repairs. You're probably going to be in for another $50,000 plus commissions. So I said to you, I know you're about to list it for 750. We were just about to buy a house down the block for 650. This one's a little smaller, doesn't have a basement. We could do 615 or 600. They came up at 615 and we got the deal. They were willing to sell to us at a discount. This is what people don't understand with real estate is you don't have to understand anyone's reason on why a seller is looking to sell. You just have to understand that they're motivated and what the thing is. And the thing could be as simple as they do not want to clean out the house. Like the stress comes in a lot of different forms. So when you go and you make your offers, the biggest thing to do with sellers is just to understand what is important to them. For these guys, what was important to them was not getting the highest price. What was important to them was they didn't want to come clean this house out. I actually think it was a little emotional as well. Their parents bought and built this house in 1957 when they originally did it. Their entire life was in this house. 75 years of pictures, photographs, toys, junk, whatever. And I think it was going to be very emotional for them to clean out that whole house. And because of that, they were willing to sell to us for $150,000 discount. Strictly because of that reason.
Yeah, no one nationwide is better positioned to find these deals than wholesalers, right? Because wholesalers are absolutely tapped into the off-market marketplace.
Yep.
It's like I guarantee you, there's a 203k way deal in every launch control inbox right now.
Oh, undoubtedly. And I was using launch control. I was using launch control when me and my wife were on the hunt on this. And again, it's getting as many shots on goal for off market. And the reason why your retail buyer doesn't go off market is because generally speaking, like there's not as much value they could bring to the table other than a private sale and them not having to pay commissions. Right. But when you're able to go off market with these renovation loans, you're able to bring an extra thing to the table, which is being able to close on the property as is, right? Being able to purchase it in whatever condition and being able to use the money you can get from the bank to make whatever repairs need to be done. Now, in our case, we did a massive overhaul on this thing. We added 800 square feet. We fully gutted the place down to the studs and basically rebuilt the house. Cost us a bit, cost us about $300,000 in renovation. We're all into it for $9 million, but it's worth 1.4 now. So, wow. And all we put down was 60 grand. And actually we only had to put down 30 technically, but we put down 60 because we wanted to, because, we wanted to make our payment a certain amount. But yeah, we did it using the bank's money, not my money. I didn't pay out of pocket for a $300,000 renovation. Hell no. Yeah. I used the bank's money to do it.
Yeah, no, that's such an amazing part of this, of just being able to fold that in. Because I don't know the numbers on this, you might, but if you put in say $40,000 in renovations using the bank's money, there's probably a 2 or 3x multiplier in terms of what that equals in equity in the house. Once those renovations are done, right? Yeah. So it's just absolute found money off of
found money is the best way to state it. And I talk a lot about this with my community and on the content I make. There's a premise I call equity arbitrage. And equity arbitrage is basically looking for houses and looking for opportunities where you can easily convert spaces or create upgrades where that, let's just say we're buying a house at $100 a square foot. All right. Now in the market, the average price per square foot is $200 a square foot. And that on the high end, on recently renovated homes, the price per square foot is $300. right? And then you know that it costs you about 100 a square foot to do these renovations. So in our case, in our house, right, this actual room I'm sitting in, this office I'm sitting in, used to be unused attic space. It's a Cape
Yeah.
style house. It was just an attic. It wasn't real square footage, right?
Yeah.
But what we did was we converted this attic space. Obviously, we had to add a little bit of a dormer. We did a little bit of a dormer in the back just to lift the roof up a little bit. And that cost me about $200 per square foot, about to add an extra 400 square feet of space up here. But what's cool is in my market for newly renovated homes around here, the price per square foot is like 480 to 500. So it took me $200 a square foot to net 450. Right.
Yeah.
So to your point, the whole idea of like found money is like there's properties out there that are already really set up in a way where all you have to do is just look at, hey, what's it going to cost me to fix this up? And then what's it going to be worth when we're done? You know, it's the ARV concept, but when you break it down in like a price per square foot number, or you just kind of see like what your top of market is, and you know you buy at a lower number, it's your own house. Like you're probably going to hold it for a little while. That equity up front, you're making 10, 15, 20% equity up front. And then you're owning the house and hopefully making 4, 5, 6% equity year over year while you hold it.
Yeah.
And you only
Yeah.
put down 3%. So you're
Right.
literally making your money back in the first year just with appreciation on average where you're at in the United States.
Yeah. And that's where people start talking about building, generational wealth.
Bingo.
I mean, that's where that comes from, right? Is you start stacking those opportunities up, and the rest of your life is taken care of, and maybe your families too, depending on how long you hold it, how long it's a valuable asset.
And I want to say that when I first started this game, the focus was cash flow. And I think a lot of people it is. And I'm going to
Sure.
be a little bit of a contrarian on this because the gurus out there and stuff talk about like buying cash flowing properties and buying a multifamily building and getting a bunch of cash flow. And what I can tell you for sure after now owning property for almost a decade is that in the beginning, cash flow really seems cool. And I used to think cash flow was king. And maybe it is in the sense of maybe giving you, as we talked about, a little extra breathing room, right? Giving you that ability to, have other income sources coming in. And to your point of what you said about like having what you need. And I always related it to like being able to breathe a little easier, like not looking at prices at the grocery store and just
Yeah.
buying what we want. And I know it seems like so trivial and it almost seems like, I don't know. I feel like it comes off arrogant when I say it sometimes, but like that's the difference. The difference is nothing as drastic as like, again, I'm just vacationing all over the world and flying on private jets and just, driving supercars. It's like, if my son wants to go buy a baseball bat, we go buy him a baseball bat for his little league coming up, right? Like I don't think twice about it. And I know growing up, my parents couldn't do that. I know I had times where my parents were like, I can't get you this, or we can't afford for you to go do this. And I love my parents for it. And they were honest with me, but like just that luxury alone is what a lot of people in the world don't even have. And to be able to your point, like just have the ability to go to the grocery store and not look at the pricing, go out to dinner and not worry what the bill is going to be. Right. And growing up in an environment where that was always a worry and a concern feels a little better. And that cash flow does help you there. But with all that being said, after a decade, I've realized that the wealth and the appreciation that comes from the housing and seeing, wow, okay, two of my properties are actually getting to the point of having 10 years of payoff on them. And like, I'm actually not paying much interest anymore. I'm like starting to bump into the principal column. Like I'm starting to move that mortgage loan down. Right. And it's
Yeah.
like crazy. And then as the value of it just keeps going up and up and up. So it's compressing that way and going up the other way. So my wealth is just growing. And that's really cool. And that opens up a lot of horizons for you and helps you think in a much different way. And now with kids and everything, to your point of generational wealth, I think about that a lot now. God forbid I drop dead tomorrow. Maybe they wouldn't be able to keep all the housing, but they could sell it all and at least get a good chunk of money that they can go and hopefully go find where their next move is. And that really is what it's about at the end of the day. But a lot of people don't like to talk about equity because it's slow. People don't like to talk about wealth because it's slow. And in this day and age when people are making, millions of dollars in Bitcoin, and we're not the average person, but we see a couple people make a fast payday, everyone wants that. And that's really not what this game is, unfortunately. But fortunately, if you have the time to wait.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. Like I remember years ago, paying off student loans and thinking, "Oh, this is going to feel really great. This is going to be a big win for me." And
Yeah,
it
it's like an
didn't.
extra $500 in your pocket, right? Like that you didn't have to pay
Right.
every month.
But the accomplishment of paying it off, it felt like cleaning the garage. It was like a thing that needed to be done. It didn't bring me joy. I guess I'm happy that it was done, but it didn't like bring me any real joy. But I
Yeah.
definitely remember after that, when I started making more money, it was through a W-2 situation, but started making
Sure.
more money. And I realized at some point that I wasn't thinking about money anymore.
Yeah.
And I wasn't living extravagantly. I wasn't like jetting around, but I was eating at the restaurants that I wanted to eat at whenever I wanted to. I was,
Right.
maybe buying slightly better bottles of wine. I was,
Sure. Yeah.
taking some weekend trips, and none of that. I didn't think about how that fit into the budget because I knew that it did. And that that
Yes.
that feeling, that brought me the kind of joy that I thought that paying off student loans was going to bring me.
Yeah.
So when you talk
Yeah.
about like generational wealth, it's about, yes, it's about those gains in equity, and you see the overall value going up, but it's always pinned to, I guess, cash flow. I guess you and I would maybe rephrase that as stability flow, right? Where you're just like, it's not
Or
about
yeah,
huge influx
options.
of cash. Yeah, it's just options and comfort.
Yeah, comfort. I won't say that I'm the first person to say this. Someone said this along the lines. I don't know if it was a mentor of mine or whoever it was, but like basically the biggest risk is depending on a single income. If you think real estate investing is risky, try depending on a single income, right? Like that is the riskiest thing of all because again, if with real estate, I have so many other ways to make money. There's so many things positioned where it will continue to earn for me, right? But if all I depend on is one job, and maybe I work at a company and my CEO gets caught doing drugs in a hotel somewhere and the stock tanks and the property and the company goes under, um you laugh. There was a stock I invested in and it was like kind of like maybe not a penny stock, but like, some like new startup company. And it was one of these things that was like a sure shot, whatever. And like something I read or online and was getting a lot of buzz. And like that happened. And like the market and like he got fired and it like overnight, the stock dropped like 50%, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're just at the mercy of an outside influence. And not to say you're not at mercy with outside influence with real estate, but real estate's a little bit more tangible. And again, gives you options to have multiple income streams where if one of them does drop, you have other ways to make money in that game.
Yeah. So this is a question I wanted to ask earlier. It's a good kind of transition to that because
Sure.
um, we're talking. You were talking about you were talking about the real estate industry or the real estate in general in the United States. I've traveled all over the world, and real estate in the United States is by far the best investment opportunity than anywhere else in the world. It's a
Yep.
very mature market, and it's a market geared towards both, single family homeowners and investors being able to prosper in a
Yep.
way that no other market worldwide that I found is able to do. However,
Yeah.
somehow in that mix where entrepreneurship is so valued in the United States system, but especially within real estate in the United States, banks put far more trust into a W-2 than they do into entrepreneurship often, it
Yeah.
seems. So I know with the 203k way, I did a little research. I believe you need to show 2 years of stable income
Yes.
or a real estate investor, somebody, from the launch control community, for instance, who, let's say they're making 150, 200k a year the last couple of years, but the money's come in fits and starts as the deals
Mhm.
have come in. Are they going to qualify, or are they going to need to kind of leverage or lean on maybe a partner or a spouse that still has a W-2 to be the primary name on that loan in order to get qualified?
Yeah, it's a great question. We work with business on the lending side. We work with business owners all the time. It's that cat and mouse game of like because the other thing is too is business owners typically write off the money, right? Or they want to show off. Listen, again, love the government, don't love the government sometimes. One thing I don't love is paying taxes. I don't think anyone really likes paying
Nobody,
taxes. If
nobody
you
does.
do,
Yeah.
then you're lying to yourself. Like nobody likes paying taxes. So my answer to that is as long as you're bringing in income and it could be shown in some multitude of ways. Usually it's up to the lending team and the bank to kind of structure that. They absolutely, like, it doesn't have to be W2. Of course, W2 is the easiest because it's the cleanest and it's very just straight up, right? For business owners and stuff, it does work. It's always good to have a co-signer if you are in that position. We have it all the time where I have people that I work with that are wholesalers that are buying a house and their wife is a nurse, right? Or they are, they have another job or something like that. If you're a full-time business owner, is this the best option for you? Again, it depends on what you show. A good lending team will be able to work with you and meet you where you're at. But ultimately, it's really going to come down to, what you show or what you're willing to show. Retroactively, there's always that route you can go. It's like, hey, I didn't show it for the last 2 years, but you know what? I went back to my accountant and oops, I forgot to tell you that I made all this money. IRS
Right.
doesn't care as long as they get paid, right? So
Mhm.
you go and you do what you call like amending your previous tax returns and kind of making it. You're going to owe back some money, but generally speaking, what we do with people is like, if you go and you really show or take out some of the depreciation or whatever um the write-offs that you made, you can go back and kind of, look at, what your tax liability would be and put it on a payment plan with the IRS or something. Go do
Yeah.
it, refinance, maybe pay back the IRS and go continue on.
Yeah. So always a way, right?
There's always a way, and that's, like, kind of, like, my whole mantra, man, is, like, the
Yeah.
203k way, it was my way, but what I always do say is it's the most cliche thing ever, but if there is a will, there is a way, and with people that is really with all this stuff. If you just make the decision that you wanna do something, that's what it was, I think, to come full circle on this. I knew that I wanted to get into real estate and I really didn't know how. And if there was one piece of advice I could give my 20 something year old self that got into this game and wanted to get into real estate investing is like when you're in your 20s and you're starting out, especially when you're seeing people on social media, you think everything happens overnight. And one thing I've learned is that everything happens in its own perfect time and its own perfect way. And it's often in a way that you really never expect it's going to happen, but it does happen as long as you have the intention that you want to do it. And call it the secret, call it the power of intention, call it, prayer, whatever you want to call it. But when you kind of put a lot of emphasis and thought into something and you have it always in the back of your head that that's the direction you want to go in, it never happens as quick as we want, but it will happen and that way will make itself known. And when that time comes, if it's right for you, you'll take it and that'll get you to where you want to go. But you have to decide for a fact that that's a route you're going to take. And I know back when I first started and read that book, I heard about real estate and I didn't think it was for me in that moment, but I did see myself being that person longer term. And and I'd like to say I've gotten there to some degree.
No, absolutely. I love your story. I really appreciate you sharing it with our audience. We're gonna put in the show notes. We're gonna put links to your community. We'll put links to your YouTube channel. But anything that you wanna share with the audience, again, we'll capture it, put it below before we wrap things up.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is like when people ask what the 203k way is, like the 203k way is my community, my online persona of like when I told you in the beginning, when I looked up 203k loans, there was no information about it. There's still no information about it. It's really just like talking points from lenders or agents like to make a content piece. But chances are they've never done it and like, or they've never done it themselves personally, or they've done it maybe as a lender, right? It's a very different thing. The reason why even lenders, like lenders want to partner with me all the time. They're like, why, why has this become a thing? You're not even a lender. Up until very recently, weren't a lender. They're like, how are you like creating this whole thing and this whole kind of community around it? I have a big following on Instagram and in YouTube. I'm like, because you're just talking about it from your point of view of like you giving it to someone to make you money. You never talk about it from the buyer's point of view. Like, it's easy for you to talk about it, but if you don't know how it's going to help you and your life and your family financially, it's going to be very hard for you to explain it to people.
Yeah.
I was different. The reason I got so into this was because I just couldn't understand why more people weren't doing this when I did this and saw how much it did for me and my family. And it just blew my mind that more people don't know about it. It just blew my mind when I saw the result that it gave me and the ability that it created for me to go and get into real estate investing and do all these things from it. That was the driving factor. And that's why I talk about it. And that's why I give explanations about it. And, if you go again, search me up on YouTube or like Instagram, it's at the 203k way. YouTube, it's Matt Porcaro. But if you look up 203k way, you'll find me. I always said that when I started doing this, that I just wanted to be the information that I wish I had when I went through this process the first time, because I didn't think it had to be that complicated, and everyone makes it out more complicated than it needs to be. But the people that do that are people that have just never taken the time to understand it. So I've obviously taken the time to understand it. I've helped hundreds of people do it over the years. I've done it multiple times myself personally. So my whole platform, the 203k way, is just to give more people the information I wish I had when I started.
Yeah, this is a soapbox I love to stand on, and I won't stand on it for too long now because we're wrapping up. But in real estate investment, so much of what you see, if you start searching real estate investment, is about how much money you can make and how rich you can get. And so little of it is focused on the deal level experience of how an off-market solution really helped out a family, or how finding an off-market solution really helped out you through the 203k way of being able to really get your real estate business off the ground in a way that also affected your primary residence, right? Like those kind of like ground level stories rarely get shared.
Yeah.
Cash flow gets shared. And I think it's kind of a miss for the industry not to share the good that we do on the ground level.
Yeah, that's what it's about, man. The only thing cooler than flipping a house yourself and benefiting from it is seeing someone else do it and seeing how it affects their life. It's wildly fulfilling. It's awesome to. I read something yesterday where they talked about like if knowledge wasn't shared, we would never have made any progress as humanity.
Exactly.
Like the idea, it's like people say, like I'll get people say this stupid thing all the time. They're like, if it works so well, why don't you just go and do it instead of teaching it? I'm like, because if someone didn't teach me, I would have never learned how to do this. Like, not everybody wants to teach. And like, I'm not a teacher in the sense of like, I just like sharing my experience with people because that's who I am as a person. Like,
And because you've made enough money and built enough stability that you have the time to share
and it's just teach. Like, and I enjoy it. Like I coached my kids' T-ball team. I coached fitness classes when I like helping people. I just like doing it. And I'm glad that there's people out there that like helping people, because if there wasn't, no one would ever get any help and we'd all be stagnant and there would be nowhere to go. So it's like, thank God for teachers. Thank God for people that do this stuff. And it's hard. It's not easy. I don't have to do it. I will be first to say that if you think that teaching and consulting and doing this stuff for money is why you should do it, to your point of like, should you do real estate for money? Not really. Should you do it for freedom and something with your family, if that's the driver, and building generational wealth for your family? Yeah, that's the ticket. But if you're doing anything strictly for money, it's never going to last, right? I choose to teach. Like people are like, you sell, what do you sell? It's like, I don't sell anything. If you want to work with me and consult with me, we can do that. But no one has spent any more time than me creating content about the 203k. I've spent tens of thousands of hours putting stuff out there for free for people to learn because I like it. I like to share. So it's a great point that you had. And I really just want to, hint, like always dial back to the fact that thank God for people that are willing to share their advice. Thank God for podcasts like this. Like, this is how we learn as a community. Humanity is not built on one person. Like, you have to have people that are willing to contribute and give back, because if people weren't willing to give back, again, we wouldn't have a society. No growth would ever happen. No technological breakthroughs would ever happen.
Yeah. Well, again, Matt, I really appreciate you coming on the show. We're going to have everything in the show links below. For everybody listening in, just a reminder that Deal Nation is sponsored by Launch Control, the #1 text engagement platform for real estate investors. If you're looking even to find a deal for the 203k way off market, Launch Control is a great way to get in touch with homeowners in your local area, find those off market deals, have a couple exit strategies in mind, whether you're going to wholesale, fix and flip, or 203k it. You'll have those opportunities and those conversations teed up. So reach out to our team and get those conversations going. All right, Matt, appreciate it.
Michael, thank you so much.